Hello, this is David Ridley.
And this is May.
And you're listening to
the Sound Architect Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Sound Architect Podcast. I am your host, Sam Hughes, and as you just heard, today I'm joined by composing duo David Ridley and May. Thanks for joining me today, guys. How are you?
Not too shabby, thanks.
Well, thanks.
Good. So before we dive into one of your recent projects, VILLIAN, I actually really want to ask, how did this collaboration first begin? How did you guys first start working together?
Well, we first met a good 10, 11 years ago because we both studied music together at Bristol University in the UK.
Oh, nice.
So we both studied there for 4 years, and we were actually, I think our first musical experience together or kind of collaboration together was in it was described by our friend as an earnest folk band. That we played in together for about 5 years.
An earnest folk band. That sounds great.
Aaron was on accordion and I was a fiddler. And if you can believe it, that was our first major collaboration, I would say.
That's amazing.
But we both enjoyed the composition side of kind of uni life, and it was it's a really good place to cut your teeth because there are people around who are willing just to kind of play stuff, and you don't really know it at the time, but that's just such an asset because everyone in real life is busy and needs to be paid and stuff. And so, but if you've just got crazy ideas and you just wanted to kind of be realized in some capacity, you can just, so we were both really interested in composition and ended up doing a master's there. We both kind of stayed on for the 4th year.
Nice.
And tried to cut our own niche.
There was a really good, culture in the music department of kind of non-official concerts and various different ensembles and kind of people making music together. And I think the best thing about studying there was just we just had an amazing year group with lots of incredible musicians and other composers, and it was nice. And there was just kind of 4 years of really experimenting. I mean, a lot of kind of quite out there kind of just getting our heads around kind of sound and what each of our kind of voices were and kind of pushing things and pulling things and it was kind of, I think for both of us it was a really kind of musically formative 4 years, and that's where we met. Been mates ever since.
Nice. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Yeah.
So how do you guys work off each other? How do you decide who does what or how you're going to collaborate on tracks? Because I love this stuff because everyone writes music differently and everyone works together differently. So how do you delegate tasks? How do you collaborate on the same track? Do you collaborate on the same track?
2 things are interesting about it. The first thing which is interesting is that I think even within I think every project has been very different, and then every piece and track within different projects have been different. And then on top of that, about I guess the however long we've been in lockdown, which has kind of been since we've started completed our second more kind of sizable project together. That's added another insane change because more recently we've been working through the wire, but I think kind of a general theme that tends to happen is that we do a lot of we a lot of this thing that we've got a name of it, which is laddering. So laddering, I guess one person will come up with an early theme and then throw it to the other person, and they'll completely take it and smash it around and kind of just jump on it, and then we'll have this kind of alternating kind of input on the same pieces of music until they slowly begin to get molded down and sculpted down and take shape, and then often at that point we'll then maybe get together and think about the kind of wider structural kind of decisions and kind of the more macro decisions we'll often do together, or in either in the same room or over Zoom. More recently,
we always spend a lot of time at the beginning of a project thinking about sound worlds, and I think that's a conversation that happens in the same kind of space.
Yeah.
Either over the phone or literally in the same studio with instruments and jamming and stuff, although that hasn't really been possible in the last 5 or 6 months, obviously. So it's kind of, we've had to improvise, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of like with VILLIAN, what we realized is that after you've had that conversation and you're on the same page and you've got that sound world, you've got your key sounds, you've got your instruments, you might have a few themes and motifs. We realized that it was we were working out of 2 adjacent studios, and we'd just both be in one of them, and then we just kind of like, you know, we wouldn't really set a timer, but there'd be a point where we'd be like, hey man, how's it going in here? And then we just switch studios, and each idea would kind of develop on their own, because coming into someone else's studio, particularly when you're writing to picture, and seeing where their thought process has got them, but then just noticing, oh, there's an edit point there that we're missing, and if we just brought that I don't know, shift of chord a second or 2 seconds earlier, so it hit that edit point, for example, or something like that. It's just because you get to see it when it hits you immediately, and you often lose track of that thought process if you're writing and improvising to picture. So having that constant swapping motion allowed us just to be really kind of to think very clearly about what we're doing to picture. And it just, we just realized that this was a huge advantage.
It really helps the inspiration as well, because so often as like as a composer, you're writing on your own, and then you'll be like 6 hours in, and then you just be like, oh God, I can't remember where this was going. I don't know where it's been. What's going on? And then, but when you got 2 heads, then then maybe you swap round, and then suddenly the other person comes in, and they're like, oh, it's wicked. This is going to sound great. Like, kind of make a change which you would never have thought of, and then that will completely spark more ideas, and it's a real like it kind of like it's a really good way of keeping creative and like creative excitement.
Yeah, and keeping the ball going, kind of thing.
Yeah,
and also just egging each other on quite a lot.
Support.
There's definitely a lot of that as well. Yeah,
because it used to confuse me at first, because like as you say, usually as a composer, right, most people are either taught this way or just do it anyway, but they're very insular, and they very much just write by themselves, and they're just writing alone all the time. But it's also, I don't know if it's me or it's actually happening, but over the last couple of years it seems to be more common to collaborate now. Like a lot more people over the last few years have come out as like duos, or like they've composed with someone else on a project, and at first I was a bit like, but why? And then I remembered back to like being in a band and being back in the days where I used to write guitar parts or write this and then go, I don't know where to go next, guys. Like, what do you think?
Yeah.
And it kind of reminds me of that when you talk about it. Like, it feels like you need to bounce off ideas sometimes. Like, sometimes you're just like, I wrote this thing. It's a nice riff, but I honestly don't know where it's going. Like, I don't know what to do with it next. And then someone else can really change your approach, and it must be very, very similar to a band mentality between you two.
Yeah. We've been trying to slip the accordion and viola into every single project that we've done since fiddle, and it's never. Yeah, I think the thing that we've got between each other, which like we do, so I think because we've known each other for such a long time, and we've known each other musically for such a long time, there's a lot of like musical or like creative trust between us.
Yeah.
So like if I come up with a kind of a start of an idea, and then I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase this. Like if I've come up with a good idea, I'll be excited for Dave to come on and like jump in it and change it, because there's this because there is this creative trust between us. It means that there's like an excitement about getting the other person involved.
I think that like there is definitely a sense of openness that you need to have that I think that we have with each other quite naturally, and I don't know if that you can force that kind of alchemy. God, that's
getting deep,
I'm getting a little bit into this here, but it's just I've collaborated with a lot of people. We both might write music in our own right. That's one thing. So this isn't like the only outlet that we have, which I think is really, really healthy, because we're practicing our craft. and then we get to feel the difference of what it is like to work on our collaboration stuff. But I think you also have to practice collaborating and the feeling of openness and what you need to kind of expect of yourself in that process. I don't know if you time and time again, when Aaron and I are working together, if one of us has kind of taken more ownership of a cue, say, or it's the first iteration of that cue was almost the finished product, it's never as strong as the music that we've written together, and we can't even remember who started. And those are the cues that we're like both like vibing off, because it's like, God. And I think the reason is because it's the feeling of you've created something that you don't think you could have done on your own, but you've had a hand in creating. So in the collaboration, you've created a third entity, and it's that third entity, that kind of the Aaron and Daveness, rather than just Aaronness and Daveness. That is
Aaron and
that's
Daveness.
the exciting
I like
thing.
that.
And that's the exciting thing, and that's where we're trying to get to when we write together.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think that's spot on.
So I was going to kind of like touch on that as well. Like you say, you have to be open, and I think that's probably quite hard for a lot of composers to admit, right? In a lot of art forms, people get very precious about their art, right? So it must be quite tricky for people to learn to collaborate, unless you're friends such as yourselves, or you've worked before in the band, or you guys kind of evolve naturally, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I coming back to what you said earlier, just quickly, there does seem to be a more of a, I don't know, like a growing number of composing collaborations that we've noticed kind of developing over the last only quite recently, 5-10 years. Obviously, there've always been bands, and a few of those collaborations are coming out of bands.
Yeah.
Like Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross, and I'm a particular fan of Saw Nigerians and Danny Bensi, who do like Ozark and American Gods and Enemy with Jake Gyllenhaal and stuff like that. And I think there is a slight difference in the process of collaborating, but particularly for screen, because you probably come at it with less of a preconceived notion of what you're going to do, and you look at the first cut of a reel, and you probably just think, right, what is this inspiring in us? And there's more of a kind of improvisation thing. And you kind of, it's more of a sculpting approach. And you feel like there is something there, but you've got to kind of chisel away at it.
I guess like following on from that kind of, so when we first started scoring Villain, which was our first feature.
Yeah.
So we watched the edit. It was like it wasn't a final edit. So it was probably like it was a bit longer than the final film. And then I guess like the composition started with sitting down and thinking what instruments we wanted to lead it, what sounds we wanted, what role we wanted the music to do, the pace. I mean, so we decided straight away, and I think it might have been slightly influenced by the incredible Enemy score that we wanted bass clarinet to feature like really strongly in the score, and that was like a. I mean, in some ways it's a decision, but that's definitely like that was definitely the beginning of the composition starting, because that then began to form the whole sound of the score and of the film, and that was a conversation. And it's interesting because you can't, if you're working on your own, you can't really kind of, you can't talk about you're not really going to have a conversation about like yourself and like, with yourself in the same way, and that's like a really wonderful thing, kind of being the sort of wider concepts and the kind of wider like macro larger decisions, kind of having like deep conversations about them, and kind of getting thoughts down and maybe slightly like debating different things and everything. And it's like that's definitely one place where I really feel that working in collaboration is like really amazing, and it makes the composing so much more fun and effective.
I won't lie, it sounds great to have the camaraderie in there as well. Like, you work in those long hours on different cues, and you've got your buddy there with you, like you're in the trenches together.
I mean, composing for screen, as you know, and doing sounds, that there are really fun bits and there are really big creative bits and there's huge payoff, but there's also a lot of admin.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, let's not skirt around it. And sometimes, especially in lockdown, and especially with what's been going on in the world over the last like 5 or 6 months, to have someone that's going to help you get to your desk and you to know that your writing partner is going to be at their desk with a cup of coffee at 10 a.m. and you're going to get a phone call going like, right, what are we doing today?
Right, Dave, where are you? It's 10:30. I've been here half an hour.
Yeah. It's 11 o'clock, mate. You up?
Yeah. To get those angry phone calls has been a great motivation for me. But no, that's another benefit, you know, like all those annoying bits of admin. We've got just two brains on it, and we've got the camaraderie through it, and so there's a lot that you can share that makes the burden a bit lighter as well. There's also, to be brutally honest, like at the beginning of lots of screen projects, it can be very, very daunting. I mean, we haven't, you know, we're not that long in the tooth as a partnership, but we've both written for a few projects, and I'm always like, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to do this? I feel that, I don't know if you do actually, Aaron. I feel like you've got a lot more, like you've got much more self-confidence to me, but every time, so having, like when you first watch the rush of a new, you know, thing for screen, and you're like, oh my god, I've got to make this sound amazing.
Yeah.
And there's so much to do, and I don't even know how many cues we've got to write, because there's 1.5 hours of film,
where do you even start?
You know, where do you even start? And having those thoughts, and you're just like, can I do this? Like, did I just fluke the last one? Have I fluked every job I've ever done? Oh god.
Yeah, imposter syndrome stepping in massively. Like, someone's gonna catch me now.
Imposter syndrome.
Like...
Yes, that's the thought. That's the thought that you feel. Like, oh dear, this is
Game's
it.
Up.
I'm gonna die.
Might as well flee the country.
Yeah.
It's the classic thing of like, so it's like first hearing about the project, so kind of like first getting brought into the project kind of book before it's been shot or before you've got any edits, and it's like the feeling of just insane confidence of like, yeah, we're gonna smash it. Yeah. Like we're the right guys for the job. We're like, this is gonna be amazing. Sweet, can't wait, on it. And then you know, 4 months down the line, then you get the edit, and I'm watching it and then going, oh god, don't know what we're gonna do. What are we gonna do? We can't do
screwed.
this. What have we got ourselves into?
The idiots that employed us, they're going to be so upset.
And then the following 2 months are like, oh, okay, oh my god, this like, you know, and then like just insane ups and downs.
Yeah.
And when you wake up at the end and go, man, did we write that?
Yeah. You look back and you're like, God, I couldn't do that again.
Yeah, what a nutter. Who did that? Oh wait, who wrote this?
I do feel that on the kind of bringing it back to the collaboration, that I feel that both of our ups and downs maybe are slightly out of sync, which is the best possible thing.
Oh yeah, definitely.
If I'm having a freak out, sometimes that'll be a point where Dave's got like the uber confidence, and that kind of brings us
phase cancellation, boys. That's what you want.
And then, yeah, exactly.
I don't know if the freaking out or the overconfidence is more helpful, because sometimes when you're feeling overconfident, you're not actually doing much. So having someone freaking out to bring you back down to earth,
yes, to ground you. You find the perfect balance. So you touched on VILLIAN earlier. I want to talk about that a bit more. So that's one of your most recent projects, VILLIAN. It's a crime thriller, and it stars quite a lot of like EastEnders and Casualty people by the looks of it. But it's had like some really cool responses to the soundtrack and the sound design and stuff. So like it must be quite nice to read. I mean, did you read the Guardian's review and stuff? Did you look at the reviews and think, oh wow, nice, they actually mentioned us? Like, cool.
Yeah, we read a few of the reviews. You know, we are excited to know what people thought, but I don't know, not necessarily expecting to get a mention in lots of film reviews, because people are just unless it's a specific music specific magazine. But to hear that the score is, people have picked up on it, is really refreshing, I think. I mean, people. If you've worked in sound for cinema, you realize just how important it is. If you've seen a film without any music, you realize how important it is. So I think that
when you see it silent, you're like, oh wow, this is weird.
Yeah, this is an awful film. No, you just, but I just think it deserves more mentioning. I think music in general for screen things, it just deserves so much more praise. But obviously, I'm going to think that. But there we go.
I think with VILLIAN, so VILLIAN was our first large scale project together, and I think we were. I mean, maybe I'm not sure we quite realised it kind of at the time, but we were incredibly lucky with it because it just required a lot of scoring and a lot of quite thick scoring where we could be really expressive and kind of and bring the music to the quite to the forefront at times and help dictate the pace. And it was a film where like we were really able to kind of like throw everything at it in a way that could kind of maybe not that in a more subtle score you wouldn't throw things at it, but it's in a different sort of way. So we were really lucky with that, and I think kind of a lot of the praise that the soundtracks got is kind of is in part because we were able to really go for it, which was just a gift. It was great.
I think we were also really lucky in that it was Phil Barantini, the director's first film, and he was, I think, quite strongly had his mind set on the fact that he wanted to make his own impression, and he wanted to kind of subvert what you might think when you see the title VILLIAN as a kind of like East London gritty kind of crime thriller.
Yeah, it's a very strong title, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a really strong kind of like I don't know, meaty title, and you just think, okay, I'm going to see some violence here. I'm going to see, but I think that Phil is 100% focused on truth in stories and expressing that, and like having a feeling of the truth of the characters coming from the real world. And it's also, I think he's an incredibly emotional person, and is just demands that response from his actors. And so from Craig Fairbrass, the main character, Phil's main focus, I think, for Eddie Franks, who is Craig's character, was to get the emotion and the kind of like the arc of the emotion through the film, I think that he kind of gave us carte blanche to really try and focus on that journey rather than just make it a big kind of blockbustery smash. I don't know how to describe it, but just the kind of like a smasher of a score. He wanted the kind of like the inner narrative as the focus rather than the kind of action and the coolness, which is something that we just jumped at because that's us all over. We wanted to help him express that, I think, which is great.
Nice.
And interestingly, Craig had seen one of Phil's short films that we worked on, and Craig demanded that Phil bring his whole team on from that short film onto VILLIAN.
No way.
So it was a lot of our debuts, but that's kind of
awesome.
I get. Yeah, I know. It's absolutely incredible. But
I don't think I've ever heard that before.
yeah. The lead actor was like, yeah, but you can direct it if you want, but you're gonna have to bring your whole team because I like that film. So Phil. I think, to be fair, I think Phil would have done it anyway. That's got to be said. He likes trusting people and building a team, but it's just it was we kind of found that out later. But Craig Fairbrass is like, he's been what's the word, fighting our corner.
That's awesome. That's super cool. It's very rare as well. It must be really nice to have someone fighting your corner like that.
Yeah, when people like that are really concerned with how their films sound, I think it's really cool.
It's a nice change.
Yes.
So you kind of touched on it there. What was the exact brief that they kind of said to you when they first hired you on the film?
So I think like and this is probably going to touch slightly upon what we were saying earlier about kind of the instruments that we chose for the score as well. There were like kind of with our kind of first conversations that we had with Phil and the rest of the team and kind of what the music was going to convey, there was I guess the two main things that were really important three main things that were really important that we really wanted to express was, so the first being Craig Eddie, who's a character. He's the lead character played by Craig Fairbrass, and he's the whole film really is about his journey, and he's a very he's been in prison for 10 years. He's quite damaged, but he's also quite a force as well. Like
he's got a nobleness about him.
Yeah, and he definitely has integrity.
Exactly. Yeah. Like kind of an honor kind of gravitas.
Yeah,
that's kind of like about honor.
Gravitas is definitely a good one to describe it. So there was the expression of that. There was the expression of the setting of inner city East London and that grittiness and that realness, and then the third thing to express was specifically the character of Eddie, again, which is Craig Fairbrass, the relationship with his daughter, which is a theme that kind of goes throughout the film, and is kind of how the film manages to explore, I guess, Eddie's intentions post coming out of prison, and it explains his change and why he wants to go on the path that he's going on. And there were three things which we wanted to kind of present very differently on a musical level. So Craig Fairbrass, which we touched on before, was the bass clarinet, because the bass clarinet is just so deep and like woody and rich and organic, and
it stands out as well, doesn't it?
Kind of it stands out. It is used a bit, but it's not a sound that's going to blend into the wallpaper. It's a strong sound. And then the East London, that was kind of, I think the way that we were seeing it, that was the kind of electronic and kind of processed elements of the score. So a lot of like washed out kind of tape loops and drones and tape delays and
thuddy fast percussion loops.
Yeah, that like and the sort of, again, organic sounding, but a bit blurry and a bit disconcerting.
Right.
Yeah, because it's a world that he doesn't understand either. So I don't think we wanted to just put like kind of modern electronic music in. It needed to be kind of like his.
Well, it's kind of a dissonance with him, I guess, as well, isn't it? Because he's interpreting it differently.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the third, which was his relationship with the daughter, was there was a lot of piano and cello in the score as well, and which was a bit like, especially the piano was like where the score was at its most delicate, I think, harmonically as well as kind of sonically.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, like, it's quite a mix, isn't it? Because like you're saying about the piano there, and you've mentioned the kind of bass clarinet, and then you've got that mix of electronic in there. So it's a really nice blend. I was listening to some samples recently, and it's got a really nice full mixture there. Is that something you aim to do on every kind of soundtrack, or this one just spoke to you in that way? Like you said you had those three things to focus on, and they all just kind of called to you these things, right? So you're saying that each one just kind of identified itself as electronic, or as a bit more piano, or a bit more bass clarinet.
Yeah, I think you know what? It's to be brutally honest, I think that these things become more identifiable with hindsight. At the time, I think you're just kind of reacting.
Yeah.
And everything that Aaron just said about those three focuses, it's like, oh yeah. the piano just does completely fit the line of Chloe, the daughter, and the delicate nature of that and stuff. And it's just like, oh yeah, like that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to like see where the main character arcs and the emotional arcs are through the film, and build sonically from those kind of like sub stories, I suppose, those emotional stories.
Yeah.
I think in a film like that, that's what you're trying to do. I think that I don't know if we think that it's important to be creating a score with contrast in it. I think that we're not thinking about the kind of soundtrack album when we're doing the film, but then when you kind of like, when the dust settles and you've handed in the score for the film, you're like, oh god, there's probably enough material here for a soundtrack album. We should put it together. And it was a different beast, kind of like putting the playlist together, because it's not like how it happens chronologically in the film. But then there happens to be contrast because you've been telling these different stories. And I think we're both quite interested with it, especially with this kind of film, in avoiding kind of like orchestral tropes, and we wanted to make quite a kind of like a textural, tangible sound, get up and close and personal with a couple of key instruments, and so what I'm trying to say is there probably is like much more contrast that we could have put in that score, but at the end of the day, you're trying to create a sound world that you sit in and you explore different corners of really thoroughly, rather than completely change the sound, I suppose.
Well, you don't want too much contrast either, do you? Because then it just kind of messes everything up.
Yeah, exactly. You're trying to paint with the same paintbrush. That's a really bad analogy. You know what I'm trying to say. Occasionally you use a roller, occasionally, you know, yeah. But,
no, let's just stay on this analogy. I want you to fix it. I want you to...
There must be like paint with paints, but not bring the crayons out.
Yeah. No one's interested in felt tips anymore. No one gives a shit.
Just like... Yeah, stop it with the permanent marker. I think one thing that we are both really interested in is like this blend of organic and electronic, and extending the organic with the electronic, and kind of like finding kind of spaces that fit like within, like in between those two kind of, I guess, mediums and sounds and like histories and everything else, like is something that we've that I don't know, like it, I mean it worked really well then, and we thought about a lot, and is kind of, and it kind of fits our personalities
with Aaron's kind of solo stuff. Sorry to blow your trumpet here, mate, but
it's a family show, guys.
Aaron oh God, here we go. Aaron's solo stuff, it blends kind of sound design with composition and music so freely that you don't quite, it's slightly unclassifiable what you're listening to, you know, using enormous I'm trying to avoid saying either music or sound design, but it's impossible. Using like kind of these huge kind of soundy gestures within a musical piece, and just exploring different things. And to be brutally honest, I definitely at uni, even as early as that, was like, oh, there's probably a different way of doing music than just kind of like writing it on a piece of paper, and and then kind of canning it to musicians and playing that, because I come from more of a classical background than Aaron in terms of like, I don't know, I was just playing in orchestras since I was quite small on the violin and things like that. But then I think Aaron's always, he was way ahead of me and all that kind of stuff. And then I definitely developed a bit of a taste for it in theatre, because I did a bit of sound design in theatre, and I realised, oh God, there's a lot of fun to be had here, and it's definitely there is a way of listening to this that is musical. So yeah, that's just, I guess, building on what Aaron just said. But we're always interested in how you can push organic elements into sound design, and and with James Drake, the sound designer on VILLIAN, he was very open to that kind of thing. Not that we're stepping on his toes very much, but I think he was really interested in seeing a couple of these ideas realized, and seeing how certain sounds that we'd kind of produced, even from like a bass clarinet sound or something like that, could end up enhancing visually what's there.
Yeah,
and I think that creates quite an interesting experience when you're watching it.
Yeah, definitely.
Or maybe you just don't notice. I don't know.
Well, some people never will. You know, some people never notice the music or sound design, and you know, I just don't listen to them, so it's fine. So there are sometimes when you've watched a film and it all like so I've really been making an effort in the last, it's not recently, in the last like 4 or 5 years now, when I'm watching films, I'm like, right, I'm gonna watch the film, but I'm gonna really concentrate on the music, and I want to sort of be breaking it down and seeing what the composer's doing and how they're reacting to what's going on and everything else. But then like sometimes the film's great, and then it gets to the end and you're like, oh God, yeah. I don't know what the music was doing at all, which like is nothing to do, you know.
like all that means is that it was an incredible film.
Yeah, it means it's done the job well in a way, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, I'm the same. Like if I go with the purpose to listen to it, then I will. But also it's nice not to feel like work when you're enjoying entertainment, isn't it? So sometimes I literally just switch off, don't care about the audio as much, and just enjoy the whole thing as a whole. But then you can't help it when some stuff stands out, and then other times you're like, oh, that worked as a really nice cohesive project. I didn't notice anything, but it's not a bad thing.
The dark art is through your work trying to understand what that almost subconscious process is for someone who's immersed in the film, and holding on to their attention, holding on to their immersion, and just highlighting the different things. Whilst not kind of like feeling the need to stick your head above the parapet and be like, by the way, I'm doing amazing melodies or whatever.
Didn't I just do this? Didn't I? Nice one. Hey.
Yeah. This chord sequence. How do you feel about that? Yeah.
We have to be honest here. Like, you do slightly want people to notice,
but
like, you know, not really.
But there are moments in the film. There are always like maybe 10% of the time, maybe 20, maybe half the film if you're really lucky. But there will be little opportunities. The director's like, well, you've got this movement sequence here and the music's got to be amazing.
Yeah,
we had that in Villain. The obvious moment is the last 3 minutes, which are basically this slow motion sequence. And we were asked to write a song. We were just asked to produce an incredibly emotional bit of song that was just going to punch people in the guts. That was the brief on that bit.
Nice.
But yeah, we were and being asked as a composer to stick your head above the parapet is a very scary experience. I think we were both glad it happened now in hindsight. But we basically spent probably the first like third of the time on the film completely ignoring that challenge because we just had other things to think about. Yeah. And then eventually we were like, okay, we might need to think about this now, and started. And that was definitely probably the most extreme version of laddering, because we had to write lyrics as well. So we just sent so much stuff back and forth, and it took a long time to write. But
that one, and we actually haven't done this since, but that one started on voice records of like, you know, having my cornflakes, and then like, oh, like suddenly there'd be like 3 voice records of like Dave with like different melody, like, you know, iPhone on top of the piano, like just some chords and different melodies, and it was just like, oh, nice, sweet, and then kind of like go there, but because like often the laddering is within like a session within Ableton, which is the DAW that we use for composing. But like that, yeah, we need to do that more. That was really nice, actually. The sort of like the
offline kind of approach.
Yeah. The offline. It was really fun. And then like sometimes you'd like get one and you'd be like on a bike, and then you'd be like listening to it and cycling and like dodging and kind of almost like crashing.
Not advised. Not advised.
Do you ever sing like to each other?
Yeah.
Like, do you ever go, actually, with this word, da na 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 na, and then
Aaron actually has a surprisingly pure falsetto, and he's been singing over the phone to me occasionally.
Amazing.
It's always for work. Don't worry. It's always for work.
Serenading you on a Friday night. Like.
Dave, I mean, I don't think he's got perfect pitch, but if he doesn't have perfect pitch, he's got as close to damn it as perfect pitch, or like the most incredible relative pitch that you can get. So Dave will be like, you know, we'll be able to, like, I don't know, but there'll be some chords, and then sort of Dave will have a melody in his head, and it might be like an 8-bar melody, or you know, a long melody over 6 octaves, and Dave will just be able to come out and just like sing it flawlessly, purely in key.
Oh wow,
he's a very good singer.
I think that's a bit too much, actually. to disprove you straight away. When we had to write the final song, which is called "This Is For My Girl," which is at the end of the OST, if anyone's interested, by the way, we kind of put it together and used we were it's got quite a melismatic, quite ornament heavy main melody line, and we kind of experimented on it for a while, eventually got a version with me singing on it that we were happy with, and we sent this version praying that the director Phil would like it and be like, yeah, I can really imagine that at the end of the film. That's made me feel emotional. You know, we were going route one here. We needed to impress him, and the response was like, yeah, I've sent it to everyone. Everyone's pumped about it. But I think we should get a new singer, like, blah, blah, blah. And we were like, oh, it's obviously just the draft version with me singing it. And Phil texts back going, oh my God, Dave, your voice is amazing, mate. But we should really get another singer. They didn't know it was me singing it. So
like one of those awkward moments where they're like, oh no, we weren't saying it was bad. We just wanted different. That's all I meant.
It was too good. It was too good.
Yeah.
So I'm drawing to the end of our time here, but I have a final question for you both. Well, actually, I lied. I have two questions. I've thought of another one that I want to ask you. So, first one, before the final one, is what would you guys love to work on together? What is your dream project that you guys would love to work on?
So can we say like an existing project that we wish had never been scored?
Yeah, definitely.
And it would be amazing to... I mean...
one that exists or doesn't exist.
I think one score and it came out in 2012 or 13, so when we were still studying together, and we were absolutely... It was a series, it wasn't a film. We were absolutely obsessed with the score when it came out, and also obsessed with the series. And like the score is just like it's got the amazing thing where it's really bombastic and it really like you really notice it, but it also colors and it's very colorful, but it's for like a series which is really colorful and it really creates the world. And that was
so bold. It's just incredible.
So bold, and that was Utopia.
Oh, right, yeah.
So which was a Channel 4 documentary. Yeah, again, it was like 2012 or 13, and I've forgotten his name. It was the
Christabel
Tapia
de Vere.
Yeah.
His melodies are more memorable than his name. He's absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
bit of an idol.
Just the most like incredible. Like what one of my favorite kind of soundtracks of any film or series. Like really amazing, and it would just be so fun to score because you've just got this whole like you know how like since kind of Netflix has started putting out series, there's been like a real acceleration of like how kind of forefront or like how important I guess like art departments are in series, and now series will so often have like really clear, a really clear color palette and a really strong kind of wardrobe department, and everything is so like visually and sonically in sync. And I think kind of Utopia was one of the first like shows that came out where it felt that kind of every single element of it was so perfectly married and so like bold and had such a character. From the script to the kind of the grade and the colors to like the sound design to the music, like it was just amazing, and to work on something like that where it's just like where it's so like bright and bold in its kind of its aesthetic, it would just be like really fun and amazing to work on, I think.
Nice. I have to say, I didn't expect that. That was a nice choice. Well, the suspense you built up was amazing as well. Like you talked about the series and the soundtrack, and I'm like, what is it? What is this? Like...
yeah, then it got to the point. It was like, shit, who like yeah.
Awesome. Well, sadly, it is my time for my final question. So, I mean, it can be a very short question, or it can be like a medium question because it depends on things like NDAs. So what are you currently working on now that you can tell us about? What's next?
Well, not in a rush to answer this one.
This is where you have to be very careful.
I don't think we can actually mention anything we're working on or have kind of coming up. We just scored. I don't know. I think we're quite open to different media. I don't think we're just interested in collaborating on one specific form of, like for example, just films or just, I don't know, audio dramas or what have you. We're quite open to different things, and we just had an absolutely amazing time writing for a really beautiful documentary about the 1970 World Cup.
Oh,
for
cool.
its 50th anniversary, and it was basically a media company had got hold of about 29 hours of film footage from the FIFA archive, and it's the first World Cup that they filmed in color.
Oh right, yeah.
And so we scored that, and that's coming out really soon. I think the release is a bit complicated because FIFA are distributing it worldwide.
Right. Okay.
So it'll be I think it would probably be an online release. So it could be broadcast in the UK to anyone who owns the rights to the World Cup. So that's ITV and BBC. So I guess look out for that.
Excellent.
Because like anything, like it's all about the emotional journey, and it's just what was going on in the world in 1970 and like how much it means to those players.
Yeah.
And the new style of football they created, and probably the best football team ever, apart from the current Man U squad. Am I right? No. But
get your footy politics out of it.
No, I just think yeah. Well, we're really excited about that, and we'll hopefully be following that up with some other sports documentary work that we can't say what it is, and we have the intention to come up with a concept album of sorts, because we want to keep on sharpening our tools as a collaboration, and we feel that doing that away from screen would be a really useful project. It's hopefully into some which we will attack as an idea in the next relatively short time span. So hopefully within the next 6 months we're going to put a bit of time into that, because we feel like sometimes in the current climate, and I don't know if other composers and artists generally agree with this, if you just work within a specific industry, it's very difficult for other people in that industry to understand what your voice might be when adding it to the mix of their film or their project. And having, we feel like we create a completely different sound world for each project. So having our own voice through that, I mean, there are obviously similarities, and hopefully there's a kind of a quality there. But we're interested in pushing the boat into our own direction, and then having people go, oh yeah, we'd love that, or maybe not. Maybe they'll just be like, oh, that's definitely not the guys that we want. But we're interested in building that as a brand, and we feel like it's important to be regarded as composers as an outfit in our own right, as well as like collaborators on larger multimedia projects.
So I have to say, gents, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. Many of our listeners has probably noticed as well that you brought out the London and Essex in me, so my accent has probably been a much more British Southern accent for this episode than any other episode.
Hey! Delighted to be of service, my friend.
I haven't got my telephone voice on anymore. So it's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope you'll both join me again soon in the near future.
Yeah, it'd be a pleasure to come back on, man. Thanks so much. Good luck with the podcast.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot.
No, thanks very much to you both, and take care. Hey everyone, this is Sam. Thanks very much for listening to the Sound Architect podcast today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If so, there are many ways you can support the show, which is incredibly appreciated. Obviously, there's the financial way where you can support us on Patreon, which is patreon.com/sounddesignuk. However, there are many other ways which also help, such as liking, subscribing, reviewing, commenting, and sharing via whatever channel you listen on. Even a like or share on social media really, really helps, so thanks so much for your support already. It really is a work of passion for me, and I'd love to keep sharing the knowledge from all these talented and wonderful people. Thanks again, and catch you on the next episode.